Bitcoin is starting to smell and sniff this out. Follow the Bitcoin price if you want to follow the money printing and the liquidity. I've said Bitcoin's the best expression of currency debasement. It's the best index on liquidity in the financial system, guys. Trust on this. The last few weeks we've said there's a liquidity crisis brewing. Funding markets are under serious stress. The Fed is printing money to ensure that these markets don't get out of control. Boom, government comes back. Boom, stimmies. For someone to sit here and look at me and say, yeah, we topped, the Bitcoin cycle is over. Bitcoin's at 106. It was at, okay, in fairness, it dipped below 100 for like a few hours. It was around 100 to 102, and then government coming back online dropped and it popped to 106.
The financial pipes are cracking, the money printer is warming up, and Jack Mallers, outspoken Bitcoin advocate, says Bitcoin is the only thing telling the truth. Jack Mallers argues that the real story isn't in the headlines, it's in the financial plumbing. According to Jack, the system is breaking while governments and central banks pretend everything is fine by suppressing volatility and flooding markets with artificial liquidity. He calls Bitcoin a truth machine because it reacts honestly to money printing and financial stress, unlike markets that are engineered to look stable. To Jack, Bitcoin is the last free market left. And every time the system leaks stimulus checks, emergency liquidity, or desperate policy moves, Bitcoin is the first to sniff it out. Jack points to recent weeks. The U.S. government returns from shutdown, stimulus checks are back on the table, and the Federal Reserve steps in to calm funding markets. Despite all this stress, Bitcoin holds above $100,000, the same level that was a historic peak less than a year ago. Jack says that's proof the cycle is not over. Liquidity is returning, the printer is warming up, and Bitcoin is sniffing it out. Anyone calling for a top, in Jack's view, is ignoring what's happening in real time. Jack also highlights the absurdity of a proposed 50-year mortgage. A person could graduate in their early 20s and not truly own a home until their 70s. He says this isn't innovation, it's a sign of a broken system where everyone lives on future earnings instead of hard savings. The U.S. is drowning in debt, households are drowning in debt, and extending loans for decades longer just proves the money system is failing. In Jack Mallers' view, Bitcoin is the answer because it exposes reality while everything else tries to hide it. If you found value in this breakdown, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with other investors who are paying attention. We're here to keep bringing you sharp analysis and voices that understand what's unfolding. Thanks for watching.
Title of today's show is The Plot is in the Plumbing and Bitcoin Can Smell the Printer. Fiscal dominance continues to strengthen. It's becoming a serious problem. And as I've told you guys before, Bitcoin is a truth machine. It's telling you the realities of the world around you. Things like the US government, things like the stock market, things like the Federal Reserve. These things are distorting reality. They're manufacturing volatility to be down. They're engineering risk out of your life. They're not telling you the truth. They're not telling you what's real. Bitcoin is. It's in fact, I'd make the argument, Bitcoin's the only free market we have left in the world. And so as the plot thickens, and the plot to me is in the plumbing, it's in the financial system, it's in the pipes, and the pipes are breaking. Seeing Bitcoin bounce around, seeing it react, seeing it move 5% up over the weekend as the US government seems to be coming back, and as Trump is introducing stimmies, brrr, you hear that? Shh, shh, shh. You hear that? That's the money printer. It's really interesting to see Bitcoin move. Bitcoin is starting to smell and sniff this out. Follow the Bitcoin price if you want to follow the money printing and the liquidity. I've said Bitcoin's the best expression of currency debasement. It's the best index on liquidity in the financial system, guys. Trust on this. The last few weeks we've said there's a liquidity crisis brewing. Funding markets are under serious stress. The Fed is printing money to ensure that these markets don't get out of control. Boom, government comes back. Boom, stimmies. For someone to sit here and look at me and say, yeah, we topped, the Bitcoin cycle is over. I'm sorry, you got hit in your head as a child. I'm sorry. I call the world how I see it. I don't see anything telling me anything other than number go up. And the fact that through all of this funding stress, through the Fed and the US Treasury fighting about how the US government's going to finance itself, through a government shutdown where the TGA ran up to $1 trillion balance, Bitcoin remained over 100K. 100K is the new floor. Guys, 100K was all-time high like less than a year ago. What are we talking about? Our all-time high within the last 12 months is now the new floor through dramatic liquidity stress in the financial market right before the year of midterms as the president's tweeting out stimmies and doing deals with the Democrats that unwind all of his violent progress of firing them all? I'm supposed to be bearish? Oh, you guys got the wrong guy. More money printing. Thanks to President Trump, we are indeed working on the 50-year mortgage, a complete game changer. A 50-year mortgage. I mean, thankfully, I saw no reactions online of people cheering this on. This is outrageous. You'd have to be a moron. Just think of it this way. You get out of college at 21, 22 years old, and you don't fully own your property until you're in your 70s. That's the innovation that we're bringing. That's how we bring housing down. That's how we make housing affordable. Are you insane? The money is entirely broken. And by the way this financing works, like you're going to end up paying, like, I mean, I sound like an idiot saying it out loud, but like you're going to end up paying a lot more by being in debt for 20 years longer. So it's more expensive for you to have a 50-year mortgage than a 30-year mortgage on net, obviously, because you're owing more money over a longer duration. The problem is we're in a debt-based world. Everyone is living based on their future earnings. Nobody has hard assets today. Everyone is broke today, including the United States of America.
Jack Mallers says people may think it sounds repetitive, but that's because the reality hasn't changed. The system must keep printing money. Whenever funding markets show stress, the response is the same stimulus, liquidity, rate cuts, or quiet bailouts. Bitcoin reacts instantly, and Jack points out it stayed around $100,000 through all of it, then jumped to $106,000 the moment the US government came back online. In his view, once the Treasury starts spending again and the Fed resumes cuts in QE, Bitcoin will climb further. He argues that Bitcoin isn't just an asset, it's competing to be a global reserve currency, and every time fiat gets weaker, Bitcoin exposes it. Jack draws a sharp line between fiat life and Bitcoin life. The blue line is the fake world where the stock market looks great but real people can't buy homes, raise families, or pay basic expenses. The orange line is denominating life in Bitcoin, where savings grow, opportunity expands, and the future feels affordable instead of hopeless. He ends by bringing it back to the real world. Strike continues expanding lending globally. Business lending is now live in the UK with a £10,000 sterling minimum, and after securing new licenses, residents of Idaho can now borrow against their Bitcoin legally and compliantly. Let's get back to the interview.
The podcast gets all so tiresome, and I know it feels repetitive, but I mean, this is just the truth of the matter, guys. Like, they have to print the money. I'm not, like, you guys can't convince me to be bearish on Bitcoin right now. You can't. And through all of the liquidity stress, Bitcoin's at 106. It was at, okay, in fairness, it dipped below 100 for like a few hours, but it was around 100 to 102, and then government coming back online dropped and it popped to 106. And once the government does come back and the TGA starts to get spent, it'll pop again. And once the Fed cuts rates again in December and resumes QE, and it'll pop again. And I cannot imagine this thing going anywhere but up. And this slide is a reminder that Bitcoin is a global financial asset. Bitcoin is competing to be the world reserve currency. Let's be clear about that. And so there's money printing everywhere. When the US prints money, everyone else has to print money. It's a game of who can have the weakest currency, guys. Look at that. As soon as Bitcoin launched, the S&P 500 measured against Bitcoin went to zero as fast as it could. And so the way I read this chart is the blue line is a distorted version of reality. It's not real because consumer sentiment, gold, and Bitcoin tell the opposite story. It's tricking you. And consumer sentiment is trying to catch up to gold. And consumer sentiment and gold is trying to catch up to Bitcoin. Bitcoin tells you the future. Bitcoin tells you the truth. You can't cheat Bitcoin. You can't confiscate it in central banks and governments. You can't go on and off, the gold reserve. We divorced from the gold reserve. We're back on it. Can't do that. Bitcoin doesn't need anybody. It is a self-contained, self-operated financial system. You can't cheat it. So you want to see a piercing truth? Do you want to look outside the window and see the universe as it really is? This is it. Bitcoin is showing you how bad things actually are and where consumer sentiment is actually going. Consumer sentiment is going to find that orange line. So will gold. This is the chart I was showing you guys. This is consumer sentiment divorcing from the stock market during COVID. And then if you look at it in gold terms, it makes a little bit more sense. If you look at it in Bitcoin terms, you can see the future. Now, what I did with this chart is I just inversed it, okay? So instead of looking like the world is declining, this looks like the world is getting better. This is a Bitcoin standard visualized. The blue line is the fake fiat world, the bullshit stock market, the savings account. They've tricked everyone into thinking that they're saving for their future, only for them to realize when it's time to buy a home, they can't afford it. When it's time to fall in love, they can't afford it. When it's time to buy a house, to have kids, they can't afford it. When it's time to pay off student loans, they can't afford it. The orange line is a Bitcoiner exiting the system, having children, real estate getting more affordable, education getting more affordable, family getting more affordable. When you live on the orange line, life gets cheaper. When you live on the blue line, life gets more expensive. So the white line is consumer sentiment inversed. So that's Bitcoiner sentiment. Since Bitcoin has launched, the world has gotten better for Bitcoiners. It's a bigger place. It's happier. We're healthier. Since I became a Bitcoiner, I've gotten healthier. I've gotten more educated. I've fallen in love. I plan to have loads and loads of children. I've started businesses, and I've been able to accrue savings for my future. I've been able to stack sats. I've become a net producer to society. This is the fiat world. The blue line tricking you. It's like underwater. Underground is the truth. And above water, this blue line, Trump says, oh, stock market's at all-time highs. You flip the chart. That's what becoming a Bitcoiner is. Exit the blue line. Get on the orange train. All right. And with that, a little past the top of the hour, some strike updates. So the UK business lending is now fully live. If you are a business in the United Kingdom and you want to borrow against your Bitcoin, we can support you at 10,000 GBP minimum. Next, we also enabled lending in Idaho. So we continue to expand our lending product. We're going to be everywhere as soon as we possibly can. And there's some drama over the last week, but we're regulated, we're compliant, we do this legally. And so obviously we can't just be everywhere because there are laws, or else I would be everywhere, but I can't. And so we get licenses on our own, we do everything the right way. And so we finally were able to allow loans in Idaho. So if you are a resident in Idaho and you want to borrow against your Bitcoin with Strike, you now can.
Through government shutdowns, liquidity stress, and markets engineered to appear stable, the fragility of the traditional financial system becomes increasingly obvious. Policies that stretch debt, inject endless liquidity, and suppress volatility may create the illusion of stability, but they mask the growing gap between perceived wealth and real-life affordability. Costs for homes, education, and starting a family continue to rise, while opportunities to save and build tangible wealth shrink. Hard, scarce money reacts transparently to these pressures, exposing the distortions and highlighting the underlying reality. As these trends continue, the world is gradually adjusting to a new financial paradigm, one where true value, transparency, and long-term stability increasingly define the economic landscape. How does Bitcoin's transparency and scarcity expose the weaknesses of the traditional financial system? So, stay tuned for clear, data-driven insights into the financial system. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss our weekly updates. Thank you for your continued support, and we hope you enjoy the video.